Last year, I traveled through the deserts of Tucson, Arizona, documenting a number of houseplant home tours, plant shops, and botanic gardens, but I didn't get around to editing all the videos. Now, I particularly love seeing plants in the wild, especially ones that I don't get to encounter every day. And it's always music to my ears to see native plantings that support wildlife. In this episode, horticulturalist Cale Carthy takes us through the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum's very approachable pollinator garden.
In some of our gardens, there are specific habitats like a thorn scrub, tropical deciduous forest, the Mojave. Through this corridor, we're going to focus on specific pollinators and attracting different sorts of pollinators and kind of more on a home scale, things that you could do around your house. So through here is our hummingbird garden. You're going to see a lot of these very cone-shaped, high nectar plants.
It looks like some type of mint here.
Yeah, this is a salvia.
Oh, look at the bee. He was like, I was really checking that out.
Sometimes they don't stay in their prospective gardens.
I know, exactly.
Coming over here to the hummingbird garden like you didn't hear. This is the Salvia clevelandii.
It looks like a bergamot, the way that the flowers are shaped.
I can totally see that. Yeah, and at some really high elevations around here, we'll still get some of that like Monarda, closely related plant, but this is more of this hot, low elevation plant.
When I think about my hummingbirds in the Northeast, my one ruby-throated hummingbird, you guys in the West have so much more. You know, I'm thinking about like reds and oranges. So your hummingbirds are like purple and blue.
Yeah,
and
they you know, we do have a lot of those kind of more stereotypical. There's another salvia here, pink cone-shaped flowers. A lot of our penstemons are red, but they will also go for different colors too. There are some beautiful yellow flowers. I think as long as they have that high nectar content, pretty much can be relied on that they're the cone shape, although this is a local plant, Calliandra aerophylla, or the fairy duster.
look at it, it already has like the little pea pods on it too.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also, you know, there are a lot of fabaceae that grow in the Sonoran Desert, and this is one of them. Until you see these pods, it might be a little bit hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. The leaves kind of remind me of a fabaceae, though.
Totally.
They have those iconic leaves.
And I think a lot of that might be, you know, we do have pretty nutrient-poor soils, so any plant that can kind of produce its own nutrients is going to be at a great advantage, like those fabaceae. But you will see there's a lot of nectar down at the base of these. Hummingbirds love this as well, so that kind of breaks out of that like stereotypical cone-shaped flower. When I'm thinking about creating a habitat for any sort of pollinator, a lot of it is the same thing that like a human would need: food, water, shelter. And also keeping in mind a lot of our flowers bloom for a pretty brief period of time here. So making sure that you have a staggered bloom to provide like a consistent source of food as well as water and shelter. Different animals like their water in different vessels, I guess you could say. Like a really shallow dish is gonna be more attractive to a bird than a bee that could potentially drown in it. Sometimes we make intentional mud puddles more for our insects. You'll notice, you know, there's a lot more of these like leafy flowering plants in these gardens than you would see just walking around in the Sonoran Desert. And we get asked a lot, you know, do you irrigate? Do you provide supplemental water? And we do. Many of them are not on irrigation, but for the ones that are, it's an inline drip irrigation system. And about 3/4 of our water is reclaimed water from water on site.
And reclaimed water meaning like it's gray water or something happens from your sinks or?
Yeah. So including gray water and black water. So our toilets, our sinks, they all go down to reclamation ponds that we have here and go through a series of ponds and filters. It's gonna like filter out some of the chunky material, some of the solids, some of the you know, oils. It goes through the filters a number of times. It's some UV light. We have the state of Arizona come out and check them like a month so. So, you know, obviously if we're talking about on a home scale, having access to your own reclamation pond.
Well, especially in this area where you don't get a tremendous amount of water and you might need to irrigate to have some of these flowers year round, you know?
Absolutely. Although it is sort of amazing, the infrastructure in Tucson has been in place for a while to do water harvesting on a home scale. So cisterns, water barrels, that sort of thing. And it's pretty amazing in the periods that we do get rain, how much you can collect just off of a home scale roof. But as water becomes a more and more scarce resource, it's certainly something to take into account. I think creating habitat is really important, especially in urban places where there aren't corridors, and even having like a small pea patch in a city, a garden, it's all gonna kind of connect together and create these habitat corridors.
Can you tell me what this flower is?
Bailey multiflora, the desert marigold. This you'll see a lot in disturbed areas and roadsides. It's kind of a short-lived perennial. Is another one of those that will sort of pop up in the rains, take advantage of that. But yeah, really common in roadsides.
It's a beautiful
disturbed
ornamental
areas.
plant, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
something that you'd take for granted if you see a lot of it, but yeah, but it's a nice
but really
clumper.
stunning. Yeah.
And then what's
absolutely.
this red one that's just almost out of flower? Because that looks like a definite hummingbird plant right
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. That is an Anisacanthus quadrifitus, like a desert honeysuckle.
What about this? What's this one over here that's flowering right here?
It's a Hesperalo parviflora, sometimes called the Texas red yucca, although it is not a yucca.
Gosh, it has like very much like, well, similar to the aloes, right? But also gasterias have flowers a little bit like this too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, as you know, aloes are only an old world plant, and these are native to the new world as well. But you can see, I think probably not very closely related, just a case of convergent evolution, like evolving in similar landscapes, similar needs.
So is this only for your hummingbirds, or like do you have different ones for?
We do, yeah. If we walk around the corner here, we can see a few other themed gardens. Our yucca right through here are just kind of ending their flowering cycles. There's a few that are still in flower, but most of them are about to produce fruit. And yucca are kind of interesting. Most of them have a specific moth that pollinates a specific species of yucca.
Oh, so it's like a specialist pollinator.
Yeah. The concern there is, as climates are changing, animal patterns are changing, blooming patterns are changing, all of the phenology changes, that those specialist pollinators might not be syncing up correctly with their plant.
Because they're very specific on when it blooms and when the
Exactly, it's a pretty short window. As you can see, these behind you were in full bloom less than a week ago, I'd say. So it's it's a pretty short window.
It almost benefits if you have a lot of genetic diversity, and that diversity then blooms at different times just to kind of cover your bases.
Yeah, absolutely. There will be individuals to fill niches, perhaps. Is a bit of security. Come around the corner here into our butterfly garden. And another important aspect when we're talking about butterflies and attracting butterflies is going to be providing that food source for both the adults and the caterpillars so that they can, stay put and complete a life cycle, hopefully, in your garden. That'd be ideal.
Really good point.
So a lot of these plants are specific to larval food sources, not always nectar food sources. But we do have some of the milkweeds that are, so well known. I think a lot of folks are surprised, there's milkweeds all over the United States. Not all of them look the same, certainly.
Yeah, this almost looks more like our world milkweed in the east. I don't know if that grows out here, but this one is much more succulent.
Yes, yeah, and this is gonna grow in a little bit higher elevations often, kind of more in that grassland ecosystem. Kind of getting a second bloom right now. Another milkweed here that might be even difficult to distinguish as a milkweed. This is Asclepias subulata.
Wow.
You can see.
Oh, it's got eggs on it.
Yeah, those milkweed aphids.
Aphids, yeah. Wow, it is just a little green stem.
It is, yeah, and that'll, become tasty little food for larvae as well, even the way that it is there. But this will grow in extreme environments, sand dunes, the sides of hills. A lot of the plants that you see through here are focused on larval foods.
Which is so important because when you often walk into a nursery, at least the ones that I've walked into, they'll often have pollinator plants and they'll have like things that aren't even native. They'll have buddleia and like, butterfly bush, all those types of things. And they never have insect food. It's just a flower.
Yeah, and it is, I went through a whole emotional process last year when the caterpillars were really active, of seeing your plants pretty much stripped of vegetation. I'm like, oh no, that seems like a negative thing, but really they're doing what you want them to do.
Exactly, and that feeds the birds.
Exactly, yeah. So this garden especially is very popular with birds. We have some curve-bill thrashers that live in the brush through here. This is not in bloom yet, it'll start soon. This is Conoclinium dissectum. Queen butterflies, closely related to a monarch. They look really similar, but actually use this plant. The males, you'll see this when it's in flower, just covered in a cloud of male queen butterflies. They use it to create a sex pheromone for attracting the females. So not only is it, a food source, which it is, it also, helps them reproduce in all sorts of ways. So this will become
butterfly Viagra.
Exactly, yeah.
What is this plant right here that's in flower now?
This is a desert verbena. It's Glandularia goodinii. It is a really good food resource over the winter time because we do have some butterflies that stay over the winter. They're on particularly cold days, they're not very active, but they are around. And this will bloom throughout the winter and create that nectar resource for anyone who happened to be sticking around. Also makes a really lovely, just decorative plant.
So you have a hummingbird and you have a butterfly. Are those the two gardens that you have?
We also have a bee garden as we head up this way. This here actually is more focused on moths. Moths are a pretty important pollinator in the Sonoran Desert. Kind of makes sense to be active at night here, certainly in the summertime. So they don't get quite as much attention as the showy butterflies do. But in terms of number of pollinators, that do a pretty important job.
You probably have bats here too as well.
We do. We have a bat garden as well. And we're entering the bee garden here. A lot of what we're focusing on with the bee garden is attracting native bees. Honeybees are great. They're certainly around, but they can outcompete some of our native bees. A lot of these plants are going to be maybe not the showiest, but that are specialized towards native bees.
So what's this one right here?
This is a buckwheat.
Yeah, it's got flies on it too.
Yeah, and
they love it. They love it. Nobody wants a fly garden.
I know, and it's too bad because I think, especially over the winter time, a lot of our flowers that bloom are a little funky smelling, a little stinky, I would probably say, like gym socks or rotten maybe. And I don't know this for certain, but it definitely seems like flies are more active than bees over the winter time, and perhaps those go together. Flies also have a part to play. This is Solanum houstonii. It is a Sonoran nightshade. And the plants that are in the nightshade family actually require their pollinators to use something called buzz pollination, where they will beat their wings at a special frequency, and that will release the pollen. So that frequency of the buzzing, which is great because honeybees cannot buzz their wings.
A bumblebee, right?
Yeah, exactly. The carpenter bees, the bumblebees, they're all very good at creating that nice low frequency buzz and are able to eat from these without having to compete with non-native bees. A lot of our native bees are ground nesters. So anything that has like a thick mulch, gravel, wood, whatever that may be, they're not going to be able to dig down and nest in that. So areas of exposed dirt, the whole garden doesn't need to be, but at least provide some of that resource.
Yeah, and a lot of our solitary bees, even though they're not colony nesters, will kind of nest in loose colonies, especially if there's good dirt on the ground.
Yeah, it seems like they can coexist all right. You know, you can see a lot of the wood here has been colonized by more wood-boring bees, some carpenter bees. So yeah, we've created some as well. Some nesting boxes, as you see around. And then finally, for our themed pollinator gardens, we also have our bat garden through here. Now, most of the plants that are bat pollinated are obviously going to be night blooming. A lot of them will be big and white, kind of a big beacon for those bats to see.
Reflecting in the light of the moon, you know, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them are going to be pretty high up. Bats aren't necessarily very good at hovering either, so it's like a big flower, a big target for them to hit, and high pollen return. But that includes a lot of our cacti, certainly our columnar cacti, a lot of agave as well.
You could get away with saying all of this is a bat garden.
Yeah, the whole place is a bat garden. You know, cactus, agave.
Liver of bat garden and be like, no, this huge, massive acreage of bat garden.
Yeah, exactly. This is all sort of a bat paradise, but yeah, you get a little bit of an idea of the variety of different night blooming, really showy night blooming plants through here.
Stay tuned here on Plant One On Me because we have a number of fun trips, tours, and more around the bend. Also, if you haven't yet, check out what programs we're dreaming up on our sister channel at Flock in the Finger Lakes region of New York, including garden tours and creative ecological and horticultural residencies. In the meantime, you can always visit homesteadbrooklyn.com to see our suite of online courses, from the Houseplant Masterclass to the Medicinal Herbal Flowchart. See you in the next video.